We can't believe it's Friday again. But this is episode 128. For those of you who are new to this call, welcome. And for those who have been here many times before, thank you for continuing to come. This is our typical agenda. We're going to talk about Azure updates today. We're going to, we have a little issue there. We're not talking about cost optimization today. We did that last week. But we are going to, again, revisit our WVD updates. We're going to talk about learning opportunities and swag that have changed recently. We've got something really exciting there for you. David's going to give us an update on that. And then we're going to do our upcoming schedule. We're going to do Q&A review. And then we have a great topic of the week this week. It's Azure Sentinel, a day in the life of a Security Operations Center analyst. And we've got a guest presenter, Ren, who is going to give us who's going to present on that topic. So really excited about that. So welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you here. All right. If you are not part of the Azure Hour team, you're missing out on all the fun. We actually are getting really close to 1,600 this week. If you join this call every week, you see this number creeps up pretty fast. We're pretty excited about this. So if you don't know what that is, there's a link down here to join. It will give you access basically to the actual team, where you'll have access to all the topics, recordings, all the sort of Q&A that happens between our customers, and just a lot of good content here, including our focus hour event recordings and customer stories. And this is just a great place to get access to content. You can see here that we have a lot of customers that are in this every week. So all of you out there who join this and go through the questions and post your questions, thank you. That's awesome. That's the whole point of this. If you're part of this team and you get annoyed by the updates, you can always hit the mute option on the team. So I've actually done that myself just so I can focus and go there when I'm ready to go there. We also are going to start implementing a new change this week. Many of you maybe silently get annoyed at myself or David. I think David and myself are the ones that just do the most. But you probably get emails in your inbox that says your teammates are trying to reach you. And we have decided this week that we realize this is probably annoying to you. And so we're going to quit doing those @mentions just so you don't continue to get those emails. So it will be up to you. We may do it occasionally. I won't say we will never do it. If we really want to get your attention, we might do it, but it's not going to be part of our standard posts every week. That's why you didn't get any from me today. But just know that those updates are going to continue to happen out there. It'll just be upon you to go check. It's just we want to remove the annoying part of anything about this call that might be a problem. And we've gotten some feedback that some customers get a little frustrated at that. So that's the change.
Yeah, we're listening, right? And the other thing is it's about perspective. So when you're offline, you end up getting an email notification. And I think that's what's truly annoying folks. So we've listened, and we're going to not @mention every time we post a recording anymore.
And so we wanted to make the call real too. So we put this in here today. You heard us maybe talking just before the call got started. Blue Angels flew over South Florida. I think they started in West Palm Beach, flew over Fort Lauderdale, then on down to Miami and circled around. And so we popped a few photos in here. Up here on the left, this is them flying over Fort Lauderdale Beach. If you've been to Fort Lauderdale, you probably recognize some of the skyline. Maybe there's always a tanker out there. And then we got here's the path that they took. And of course, this is I think this has happened all over the country. I know it happened in Las Vegas probably a month and a half ago, and I've heard stories of other places, but this is a salute to healthcare workers that are fighting coronavirus. So it's a pretty exciting event here today. It happened, Manuel, David, an hour ago?
About 45 minutes ago, I took that photo on the bottom right.
Yeah, so just thought it was exciting, something to share. Anything you want to say? Manuel said no CSAs were harmed here. He told us he was going to get on his roof and take a picture, and David told him to be careful. We didn't want a casualty. So I'm glad no CSAs were harmed, Manuel. All right. Let's get into the updates for the week. We have a handful that we thought were important to cover. This first one's pretty exciting because I know personally creating custom roles was a pain in the past. And so now you can do that in the portal. I'm going to show you what that looks like. You can literally do custom roles in the portal. So if you go to any resource, for example, let's just do something simple. I'm going to go to a subscription. I'm going to go to my Eric Production subscription and click on the Access Control tab here. And if I want to assign a role, I can click on Add. and you're going to see that you have a custom role here. This is fantastic because this takes you to a wizard where you can create a role. Let's just say we're going to create a role for disk edit. And I'm just making something up here. Users can edit VM disks, for example. And now, don't follow this as being the right way to do this. I'm just going to show you what you can do because there's a ton of capabilities here. I'm going to start from scratch. I don't want to clone a role. I don't want to go from a JSON template. So I'm going to click Next here. Click on Add Permissions, and what we're going to do here is we're going to enumerate all the different permission types, so all the different resources you deploy in Azure. I'm going to just type in Compute, and I'm going to see Microsoft Compute. You'll see you have, there's a lot of that may sort down from your searches, but you can play around with this on your own time. I'm just going to select Compute to give you an idea of what this looks like. This is now going to show me all the different actions that are related to Microsoft Compute that I can turn on and off. Okay, so this is pretty incredible. This is, I don't know what this takes away or changes I don't know what I don't know to, oh, now I know what I don't know, and this is pretty incredible. And so if you look around here, I don't know, let's see if we can find something related to disk.
And Eric, as you're doing that, right, so a lot of these was available in PowerShell previously, but again, it just makes it super easy to do from the portal. And just one word of caution I would tell folks is definitely test these roles maybe in a resource group prior to promoting to production, because you could inadvertently maybe cause issues with folks and permissions. So definitely test.
At the very least, just know this is here, and it might make your life a lot easier. I know several of my customers are asking me about custom roles recently, so just know those are there. New capability for you.
Can you scope tag custom roles?
Can you scope it?
Yeah. Can you scope tag them? Okay.
Yeah, this looks like this is going to be for my specific subscription, my production subscription. And then you can add additional scopes here, it looks like.
So you could do that up in a management group layer, right? To allow that to roll out across multiple different subscriptions. I believe, right? What do you have up there? You have subscription at the top. Do you have a management group?
I don't see that, but
let's double check. Hang on what I've said, because that may not be.
Yeah, it may only be showing me options within what I chose, though. So this is new. This just came out over the last couple of weeks, and so I haven't played around with everything. So just FYI there.
The other thing that's powerful, to Eric's point about like figuring out what it is that you don't know visually versus reading docs, right? The fact that you can pull the JSON means that even if you did have to take this custom role and bring it somewhere else, at least you have the JSON to be able to start with in the other location. Whereas in the past, this was all built in JSON or PowerShell.
And it looks like it is for subscriptions or resource groups. So
not management groups. Okay.
Yeah, maybe not management groups.
No, that's handled at when you get to resources. That's handled at the O365 tenant level.
Okay.
The Azure D tenant. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So custom roles. Just know that you have some new things you can play around with out there. David, do you want to give us an update on VMware?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a pretty good announcement that we were kind of unaware that this was coming out. Many folks on the call know that we've supported a bare metal VMware solution in Azure for quite some time, right? It was managed through a third party, but now we've introduced our own first party solution, right? So this is again, it's a dedicated hardware 3-node hyperconverged cluster running vSphere, all bare metal. The difference here is this particular version is fully managed, owned, operated by Microsoft. It's fully supported, is VMware Cloud certified. Again, if you're, it includes vSphere, HCX, NXT, vSAN. So anyone that's looking to extend their data center, maybe do lift and shift, leveraging their own technology, their own VMware technology, their own set of tooling that they've dedicated, years, right, to manage. You can certainly do that with this solution. So definitely check out that link. Again, it's posted in the channel. A lot of interesting hybrid capabilities that are going to be rolled out, like managing it through the Azure portal. That's gonna come with it, and also even hybrid capabilities. So I know we had a call many I think about a month or so back with using Azure Arc, right, for that hybrid management capability. So a lot of innovation that you'll start to see with this solution. And of course, hybrid use benefit. If you want to leverage extended security updates for your Windows Server 2008 SQL servers, you can leverage it here as well. So definitely, check out this blog post.
So David, we were talking this morning about how time is passing very differently right now. I think that ARC discussion was in January.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Time warp.
Yeah.
And just double clicking on this, right? I mean, I hate to say it, right, but hurricane season is around the corner. I mean, we're dealing with multiple things, right? But, it's interesting, this pivot to a lot of remote work. It's put a lot of strain on all of us. There's different usage modalities and there are different criticalities to different services. So, in addition to the hybrid and the migration scenarios, there's also a significant potential DR component that might bring value to VMware shops here, right? So just keep that one, file that away in the back of mind. If you are looking at a situation where it suddenly becomes important to management to say, hey, we've got, several bits of critical infrastructure that are in VMware that we need to rapidly be able to have a DR option for, this may be a solution for you that might be a little bit lower friction than Azure native, even ASR. So, it's a good option to have in your back pocket.
Absolutely. The next update we have here is manage and find data with blob index for Azure storage. This is now in preview. This is basically giving you the ability to add metadata at the blob level. So you can categorize your data, quickly find it with the blob index. And it extends even into lifecycle management. So it can help you integrate, tags so that you can enable lifecycle management with those tags. So it's going to give you a whole new way. One of the examples in the articles, an account that has 1 million blobs in it, and there's a tag about processed or not unprocessed, and if it is processed, then I want to see that, and it lists one blob out of the 1 million that has not been processed, and an application can use that to, process something. So it's going to bring a whole new level of capabilities. It is in preview now. For those of you who have huge blob stores, maybe you can have some new capabilities there to minimize your work effort. So just FYI. The next one here is pretty interesting as well. Select multiple resources in Azure Monitor Logs. This is basically going to give you the ability to scope out your log analytics in your Azure Monitor Log queries. And I've got an example of that here as well. So I think most of you know how to get to Monitor. I just went through the hamburger menu here and picked on Monitor. And then if I go to Logs, you're going to see here that we can select a scope. So if I click on Select Scope, it's going to show me the filter that I have here. And what I'm going to do is, if I select a subscription, for example, it's going to let me select multiple subscriptions. But if I open this, and you see the resources, and I click subscription, those gray out, and it only lets me select other scopes of the same kind. So I could also just do resource groups. It's going to let me select any scope that is the same. An example I want to show you here is, for example, I want to look at specific VMs, for example. Let's see my production management servers. And if I select a VM, it's going to quickly show that I can only select VMs at this point. So if I do that and click Apply, now I can write queries that only apply to that scope. And so if I, for example, click on queries over here of, well, let's just do performance and availability. What data is being collected? Virtual machine available memory, for example. Here's the query. I run it. Okay, this is going to apply only to my scope. So that gives you some new capabilities. I know I have customers that are running log analytics queries. The results are huge. Maybe a scope of selection will help you reduce that quickly down to a smaller result set. So there's all sorts of implications of this capability. Just know it's there. Those of you, we mentioned this last week, but log analytics is a very fundamental component of a lot of things you do in Azure. So it behooves a lot of you out there to start really getting more familiar with the Azure Monitor and log analytics, Azure Monitor Log Analytics.
Hey, Eric, I also saw right there in the schema, table schema, right, that it also filtered. Yeah, it applied the scope right there too. So you only, typically you would see all the tables for everything that you're ingesting. Now it just filtered out to those virtual machines, which is very, very handy there.
Yeah, it makes life a little easier when you're going to select your data. Absolutely. Okay. All right. And then we have one more update I wanted to mention today, and this is application change analysis. View and navigate through changes across multiple resources. This is really cool. And an example that is sort of brought to light in the article is, you know, your site worked 5 minutes ago, now it's broken. What changed in the last 5 minutes? This is the question that application change analysis is designed to answer in Azure Monitor. So let's take a look at that. Played around with this a little bit this morning to give us a good example. So the way you find this is just search up here, application, and you'll find application change analysis. And what it's going to do is it's scoped to my dev. I'm going to change this to my production. I'll turn off my dev. What it's going to do is it's going to enumerate all the resources in your scope, in this case, my Eric production subscription, and it's going to show anything that's changed, okay? There is a limit here. The thing is that this screen will only show you 10 results at a time, and you can see I have 14 other pages to go through, which isn't pretty necessarily. That's being worked on. That will change. But you'll notice here that I have a change that happened on my Silversoft DCO2 VM just a little bit ago. Now, something you can also do here is you can say, I want my resources to be of type. I can filter here, resource type, and I can say, I just want to see, for example, virtual machines. So even though the result set is kind of ugly, we do have the ability to filter down manually. And I'm going to do network interfaces. And now I can see all the network interfaces and virtual machines in this subscription. What has changed? I can change the time range, but this is the last 24 hours, which is important because my application was working 5 minutes ago. And so let's just go to one of these. I want to show you what this looks like. So if I click on my NIC, this network interface card has a number of changes that happened. And let's just pick on one of these DNS settings. And here I can see that something happened with the DNS settings. Over here on the left is what they were. Over on the right is what they are. Somebody added a DNS server. And guess what? That's invalid DNS server. Now, this wouldn't break anything unless those first two failed. But you get the idea. I can quickly, I mean, this is incredible power. I can't imagine having had this 15 years ago when I was managing a data center. But it's insanity that I didn't have to do any setup to make this happen. This is just here available for me to use, and it uses the Azure Resource Graph to bring this information in. And this can also get into the details inside of virtual machines and web apps. So it's not just at the ARM resources layer. So just FYI, something you should definitely check out, something that can help you quickly find issues that maybe you didn't get. You maybe got an alert that an application's failing, but you have no idea why. This might be the place to go next.
So who's done this, right? And I've done this. Something broke, and so you go back to the deployment history and you start complaining that you know, literally side by side in a text editor, looking at the deployment JSONs to see what changed. There's a tool that does that for you now. That's awesome.
And by the way, I didn't point this out, but this button over here was not enabled by default. So if you click on that, that might be helpful for you. Just know that that view full context is there. Okay, Manuel, I think you have some updates you want to share as well.
Yeah, so this is our kind of recurring slide on Windows Virtual Desktop and just VDI and Azure in general. We make sure that this is in the deck so you guys can click on these resources if you want to go through them. We are continuing our open office hours, a plug for that every Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We're going to continue that through next week. We were doing 8 hours a week of that, and we backed it off to 2 hours a week on Thursdays. And so come and join us. You know, we've had some, you know, it's getting a little slower, but we're getting some good activity still. So if you're deploying Windows Virtual Desktop, lab services, Citrix on Azure, VMware on Azure, you know, you have it, whatever VDI solution you're looking at deploying on Azure. If you have questions or you're trying to deploy and you're having an issue, definitely bring it to us. We will do whatever we can to help you, and other customers do too. Next one. So things that we learned this week. Oh, I forgot to roll the date. Sorry, it's the week of 5/8. But yeah, so we're continuing the deployment office hours. Just a reminder that when you're looking at the Windows Virtual Desktop documentation, it's now forked into 2 sections to reflect the spring 2020 update. So just be careful, check what you're reading to make sure that if you're working with V1, you're looking at the fall 2019 docs. And if you're working with quote unquote V2, you're looking at the spring 2020 docs. One of the things that has come up in quite a few questions, including in the Channel Zero conversation in the team, is, hey, where's the WVD scaling script for the spring 2020 version? The answer is it's not released yet. So the product team is working on that. It will be a script similar to what we have with V1, but it's not out there yet. So just heads up on that if you were looking for it. It's not out yet. The other thing was last Thursday, on the day that V2 was released, we had the unfortunate series of events that involved an outage in V1. The root cause analysis has been posted. There's the URL to it. I don't paste the body of that here because it is behind an Azure Authenticate. You have to be an Azure customer to be able to see that. So that's the URL. You can go ahead and click on that if you want to read more about that. It is actually interesting, illustrative. All our RCAs, I believe, are illustrative and quite transparent. So that I found that very useful to read. We're still working with Citrix and VMware on getting an Azure Hour presentation, but we did already, Eric and David did a great job getting the VMware Focus Hour event set up this week. We only advertised it for 5 days. We had 80 plus registrants and 60 people attended. So there's a lot of interest in VDI and Azure. VMware is one path. We're working with Citrix to do a Focus Hour on that as well. Again, the Focus Hour is about a 90-minute deeper dive where there's demonstrations, much more technical depth into what the solution is. And we will be having, we expect to have both of those partners bring a customer to do a half-hour discussion during main Azure Hour here over the coming weeks. That's it for that, Eric.
Awesome. David.
Yeah, so yeah, let's get everyone updated with learning events. So, again, many folks, maybe if you're new to the call, you may not know, but we actually have a channel number 7. We post information about Azure Fundamentals virtual training events. So we still have seats available for the May 12th to the 14th virtual training event. It's from 12 to 2, so just 2 hours per day, 3 days. If you register and attend all days, you get a voucher for the AZ900 certification exam. So definitely take advantage. Again, the details and the actual links are there in channel number 7. We've had a few questions around maybe folks that attended a previous virtual training event and they don't receive the certification voucher. So I'm pasting here a copy of what that voucher looks like. If you search your email for that email address and the subject, which begins with "Thank you for attending, redeem your voucher," typically some folks may get the email trapped in their junk folder. So if you just search for that, you'll be able to find it. Otherwise, just let us know or contact that tech skills support email and we'll help you sort it all out. We also have a remote learning webinar coming up on the 14th from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific. That talks about leveraging Windows Virtual Desktop for remote learning. So if you want to attend that session and learn more about it, definitely register for that one. Go to the next slide, Eric.
I just wanted to point out something here, David. This training that's next week, I think that there could be some confusion around this, and I just want to mention it. There was another set of training that is on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. Yes. That is different than this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So if you're in the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, don't worry. That's still good. This is a different training that was opened up to allow even more of you to attend because the first one got filled up. So just want to make that clear. Either one of those are the exact same class. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is going to be taught by myself, David Manuel, and Ed Chase. And this second one is going to be by a different set of presenters. So just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, great call out, Eric. Again, a lot of interest in training. So, we're able to secure a second class there. Okay, moving on. May 19th and 20th. Again, I've got a typo there. 19th to the 10th, right? We're going back in time. Yeah. So, Manuel, you're not the only one there. It's May 19th and 20th. We got Microsoft Build. Typically, this event is a fee-based event. Now, this year, since it's all virtual, it is free. So it's the annual conference for software engineers, web developers. I actually posted here the agenda. I actually highlighted one on Power Platform on May 20th. So register. It's free. We had an Azure Hour covering Power Platform, right? How easy it is for our low code to create these line of business apps. So definitely check out some of these sessions in Microsoft Build coming up. I'll say block both days and attend if you're able to. Go to the next one, Eric. So announcement, we actually mentioned this last week. So this week we're a great announcement for everyone joining Azure Hour. We're kicking off our secure and well-managed Azure in 2 weeks. This is a cloud skills challenge. So for those of you that have oh, it looks like we lost the PowerPoint.
Right.
Yeah, starting up. Yeah, that's fine.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let me share my screen while that comes up, Eric, and then we'll
Sure.
switch to that. And for those of you that have attended Azure Hour and some of the trainings, you notice that you attend the Azure Fundamentals training, and you gain experience, right? Getting prepped for. And let me know if you're able to see my screen, Eric.
We still see Eric sharing.
Yeah, I think it's still me. There you go. I think you're grabbing it now, David.
All right, excellent. So just give everyone a quick update, right? So those of you that attended the Azure Fundamentals training, you get a certification voucher, but in order to prep for the exam, right, we actually have these cloud skills challenges. Then we ran one in March. We had about 60 plus folks attending. 30 of you received vouchers for your next certification exam. So we're kicking another one off today. So you'll see the steps in the slide. You go in here into Microsoft Learn. The first step is to register and create a Microsoft Learn profile. So you go in here, you register, create a profile, and I'll show you here where you get your profile information under settings. Once you create your account, this is your profile right here. And then you go to the second link that we'll share in the slide, which is register for this cloud skills challenge. So right here, you're going to be able to sign up. Just enter your information, first name. Notice how it requires you to enter that Learn profile ID that we just showed you. And then also, very important, enter your institution. So if you're for your university, go ahead and enter that. That way we'll be able to track you, completion of that cloud skills challenge. And then once you register, you'll be able to complete this, start this collection. Notice this is secure and well managed, Azure in 2 weeks, going over organizing resources in Azure, setting role-based access permissions. Then we pivot into some modules around security, monitoring, backups and operations, and then finishing it up with spend, right? With Azure Cost Management, optimizing your spend, predicting costs, which is always top of mind with folks. So, if you complete this challenge these next 2 weeks, you'll receive another, right? If you're one of the folks that complete, and let's say we have 50 participants, I believe, Eric, if you can share your screen now, go back to the slide. You'll see that if we have 50 participants, we'll have a few vouchers available to give to folks. So let me go ahead and stop sharing here, Eric, and you can share your screen. So if you're one of the folks that completes, we'll go ahead and give additional vouchers to folks so that you can register and take the next certification exam. So if you already completed the AZ 900, you'll be able to register for, let's say, the AZ 104, which is the Azure Administrator, or some other certification exam.
And I put the links in the chat window, step 1, 2, 3 for you, David.
Excellent. And yeah, and here's the actual vouchers that we'll be handing out. So if we have 50 participants, we'll give away 4 exam vouchers. The more participants, the more vouchers. And folks, again, we're generous, right? So it may be even additional vouchers. So definitely recommend to register, take the skills challenge, learn more about managing Azure, and get exam vouchers.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about the upcoming agenda that we have planned. Obviously, today we're doing the Sentinel discussion. We have a number of things out here that are to be announced. That's because we're working really hard to nail things down. So we actually don't have something to name for next week just yet. We had plans for a customer story, but that has shifted on us a little bit. So stay tuned. We will announce you'll learn first in the Azure Hour customer team what next week's schedule is going to be. So then check out the channel for the topic updates and schedule there. So we plan to have a VMware Horizon story, a Citrix Managed Desktop story. We'd love to have a Lab Services story. Also, as Manuel mentioned, we did the VMware Horizon Cloud this last week. You can find the recording in Channel 6. We started our Azure Focus Hours on Azure DevOps this week. That was incredible. We had over 100 people in that class. So the first one, part 1, the easy button, is recorded and available on Channel 6 as well. Part 2 is going to be in 2 weeks or a week and a half on the 20th. So if you haven't registered for that and you want to get at least the second half, you can register with the link here. And we also have now on the schedule Citrix Managed Desktop. You can register there. We'll make sure those links get in the chat window for you. And we also have it to be announced, Focus Hours, all focused on Azure Sentinel, and it's going to be by our speaker today, Ren. So lots of content coming up. I mean, there's incredible available options for you, everyone out there to learn, to participate, to listen in. So hopefully you can find a couple of slots on your calendar for at least a few of these, and then the others will be just sitting out there waiting for you to ingest when you have a moment. All right. Manuel and David, anything that you want to share today from the team?
We're a little tight on time, so I hate, we always end up in this spot where we end up a little tight on time. But there was a lot of activity in Channel 0 and Channel 1. Very good questions out there. I would say, let's see, we had some good questions about Azure Automation, scripts around, Intune, how to dump out the devices out of Intune. That was interesting. And we had, honestly, this week, I think, Eric and David, I would say it was about the most peer participation we've had in any week. I was really excited to see how many of our customers were helping other customers with thoughts or questions or other answers. And so I would say, you know, typically we're coming through trying to help answer the questions, and it was awesome because I'm seeing so many really awesome responses to customer questions from other customers. So thank you all for being super participatory. That's what this is about.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier this morning about, you know, kind of like the community, right? How, you know, these are different channels and which are the channels that has the most activity, and definitely channel 0 and 1 around, you know, Q&A is the most interactive, the most participation, and then the certification channel, right? So, you know, highly encourage everyone to participate, right? If you're not part of the Azure Hour team, just join, right? And just leverage the great resources that are available there for everyone.
Yeah. So, you know, we'll continue to consider questions to bring up on the call as we have time, but you know where the resources are, incredible resources. Go out there and use them, ask your questions. The cool thing is we have some of you out there offering help to others just unsolicited, so we really appreciate that. Okay, Ren, are you ready to take over the presentation and give us a discussion around Azure Sentinel?
Absolutely.
All right, the floor is yours. You can share, and we appreciate you being here. If you want to just start off with introducing yourself, and you can have the floor.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. It's a fantastic invite to be here to share some thoughts and ideas around Azure Sentinel and the day in the life of a SOC analyst. My name is Ren Ewer, and I've been with Microsoft since 2012. Started with our Xbox Live security team, helping to build out our security operations center within the Xbox Live entity there, organization. They later merged us in with the larger Windows Devices org, where we helped build that SOC integration back into our Cyber Defense Operations Center, where, you know, we now take a lot of you, our customers, through a tour within our Cyber Defense Operations Center. So it's fantastic. If you haven't been, I highly recommend that you go take a tour, see what that looks like, and kind of experience the way that we look at the day in the life of an analyst, look at the way we use tools and how we kind of address large scale incidents, attacks, and you know, different tactics and things that we see through our organization here within Microsoft. I was a technical duty officer there. I sat, and ran a lot of things there, helped build our hunt teams, helped drive a lot of our SOC processes. But as of late, I am now the Senior Advanced Security Analytics GBB. And what that means really is that I have a dotted line to our product group around our threat hunting, advanced threat protection stack, as well as our Azure Sentinel stack, helping customers such as you, as well as our product group, making sure that we're getting out the right features, capabilities, and things that you want to see, and really moving the needle in the security industry, especially around SOC operations.
Read-only mode, don't worry about it.
So that's my current role, and some of the things that I do. So today, let me share my screen, and I will share with you.
Brent, I'm going to mute all really quick. Just unmute yourself, okay?
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, you should be good to go.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, I really like your apartment there.
Yeah, I noticed you had the same one. All right. I'm gonna close that, so we'll jump over to here. Oh, really? It's gonna do something fun on me. Here we go. All right. So just to kind of get started here, this is a level 4 training, day in the life of a SOC analyst. I'm going to kind of tease this where we're kind of short on time, but the goal really here is to kind of walk you through the tool. So a lot of the things I'm going to show you, it is going to be through PowerPoint, but I highly recommend that, as soon as we announce, the Azure Hours session, the one that was announced, and Eric and David, you guys can kind of clarify this a little bit better. I highly recommend you guys join that, because it's going to be a multi-hour deep dive. So what this is more of a teaser. It's more of a introduction to that session, to that 2 to 3 hour deep dive session. So a lot of the things I'm going to show you are going to be things that we're going to, talk through on that deep dive. I will have more use cases, things that we can kind of deep dive into, and a lot more time to be able to ask and answer questions around this. So with that being said, we'll kind of jump in. What is this module about, right? What are we overviewing? We're really looking at how analysts use Azure Sentinel today and how we recommend KQL. We offer some KQL workshops, writing rules and things. I've got some really cool tips and tricks around how to go after advanced KQL operators, flattening the JSON schema within tables, within log analytics. It was mentioned that there's a lot of Azure log analytics around the Azure services, and that's absolutely true. So getting familiar with Kusto query language and understanding how to apply the different operators within the Kusto query language will benefit you as a SOC analyst within the Sentinel platform. So the SOC analyst workflow, we want to create a rule. So this is how we're going to walk through today's presentation. We're going to create a rule. We're going to look at triaging an incident, investigating that incident, responding to that incident using our SOAR capabilities, and then handling any false positives and pushing that back into the SOC operations workflow. So let's jump into creating a rule. We want to use built-in analytics while we write that rule and ensure we're going to ensure ServiceNow integration. We have playbooks. This is our SOAR capability built into Azure Sentinel that gives us a library set of integrated applications that we can plug in at the time of building our logic apps within that playbook. And then conditions, forking off conditions, using for each loops. We can do a lot of really cool things within logic apps. If you're not familiar with those, I will have some links for you at the end of this presentation. Recommend that you go and take a look at that. Look at some of the GitHub communities around logic apps and the SOAR capabilities, because how we do integration from those different tools gives you the flexibility and capability to drive automation back into existing tools that you may have within your current environment and ecosystem. All right. So from an analytics perspective, and you notice that we're kind of bypassing the data connectors at this point, right? Your environment stood up, you've got data flowing in, and now what do we do with that data? How do we pull signal and intelligence, rich signal and intelligence out of that data? What do we do with it? Well, out of the box, we're going to give you rule templates. Now, these rule templates were built by our Mystic team, our Microsoft Security Threat Intelligence Center. They're the team that does a lot of our R&D, and they partner very heavily with the analysts and the technical duty officers that sit inside the CDOC to drive the way that we look at threats, threat landscape, attacks, incidents, and helping us to understand the type of data that maps to those, and then pulling those out and building those under a Kusto query framework. So all of the analytics that you're going to see today are snapped into a Kusto query framework. You can see here, right, we have our names, our rule types, data sources, and our tactics. We're going to talk a little bit about this. We map everything back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So the first thing we want to do is we want to choose a template, right? We can search for that template. We can look for if we know a particular data source, or we want to map to a particular tactic or a severity. We can certainly do that all from within the library of the out-of-the-box rule templates that we offer within Sentinel. From there, once we have found the right one, then we want to understand, do we have the events turned on? You notice that this is gray. Well, when it's green, we know that we're receiving the right events. So it's doing a check against the data within the table schema of log analytics to make sure that this analytic can be applied to a data source that is already under the roof of Sentinel, that Sentinel has the purview to be able to go look at that data and run a scheduled KQL query against that data source. Then we go ahead and we create it. We can step into a scheduled query rule. We can create a rule from scratch. Okay, and so as we do that, or we can use that rule template. As we do that, we step into the analytic rule wizard. Now, this rule wizard has evolved over time. We continue to grow the feature sets within the rule wizard, and it's important that you understand some of the nuances that are here within our rule wizard. So we want to give it a name, possibly even a description, and then set the defense tactics or the MITRE attack tactics within the dropdown, right? Once we do that, we then step into the Kusto query language editor where we edit our query. We can click on view query results. We can make sure that we're adding additional operators, joins, unions. Maybe we want to query something that is outside of log analytics. I'm going to show you an example of that here in a little bit. And that really gets us excited because we can do a lot of really cool things. Now, one of the things I tell our customers, and I'm really excited about this, we're the first SIM that gives you a programming language-based correlation engine using Kusto query language. And what does that mean? It means that you can write functions, you can have variables, you can store data inside a variable, you can create a function that stores data, or that you pass a parameter into that function to store it into a variable that you set into that function to go do something around that data. You can build parsing, rule-time, runtime parsing using the JSON parse operator to go after and extract additional data sets and fields, push them into different columns, and give them custom names. Right? You can do all of that. You can then save that query into the query editor. You can also push those into functions so that you save them later and call the short name of the function to be able to shorten the life of the query, right? The runtime. All of these things give you the capability of really making the language underneath the correlation engine very flexible, very dynamic, and customizable to the needs of the business and the type of activities and tactics that you're looking for. All right. So once we have that, we want to then attach that to our entity maps. This is critical, and this is another key differentiator within Azure Sentinel because we took the idea of looking at key value pairs and adding a tertiary value known as an entity. That tertiary value, an entity, is an object type, right? As you can see here, an account, a host, an IP, a URL, just to name a few of those entities. And within the scope of the query of the data that we are going after and querying for, we can then map those entity types to fields that we pull back within that query. So in this particular case, a host, we map it to a computer, same with a client IP address, a username, and this really gives extensibility into the relationships that you're going to see as we dive into Sentinel and take a look at how those relationships are mapped together through the Graph UI. Once we do that, we set a schedule, a threshold, right? We want to make sure that we understand how often that the rule is going to run, looking back at data within that same threshold. And then this is a new feature that is now in the wizard, our incident settings. So we can come in here and we can say, well, I have a rule that is a support rule and I don't want to create an incident, or I want to daisy chain rules to be able to look for multiple rules before I create an incident, right? So now we're getting into the capability of being able to apply rule sets very dynamically based on the type of activities that we want to flag. And maybe unite those activities together before we bring them all up into an incident. When we do that, we can then turn on alert grouping, or right? And so as we group all of those alerts into a single incident, we can take a look at the way we want to group that. We can group those by matching of entity types that we've mapped within the set rule logic, or if we want to trigger an incident based on all of the alerts that we're looking for within the Kusto query, or if we want to group alerts into a single incident based on the only selected entities versus all the entities. So giving you some customization there, some flexibility around the way that you can consider alert grouping. So once we have that, then we give you the flexibility to be able to attach to our Logic app, our SOAR capability within Sentinel, to go kick off some type of activity. Now, as you can see here, I have a list of playbooks here, right? We've got go get geo from my IP address. Maybe I want to add to a ServiceNow ticket. Possibly I want to change the incident severity, right? I want to take a look at other types of activities. Some of the playbooks that I've helped customers create and write is isolating a VM. From the network adapter and isolating that so that I still have my EDR solution that I can talk to it, run an investigation package, pull back additional data while isolating that VM from any other type of network activity, right? So we're giving you that that ingenuity, that creativity to be able to think outside the box and see the world the way an analyst would see it, and kick off automated responses and automated things, right? Reducing the amount of work that a tier 1, a tier 2 analyst would have to do. But we're not done there, right? Even though we can build all of this in at the time of rule fire, we're still going to give our analysts that capability during the time of investigation to go kick off an additional playbook, right? Outside of the rule fire, right? So during that investigation, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. All right, so now we're going to step into an incident. We have created our rule. We have our data sets. We understand how all of those things are tying back together. We understand our environment variables and what's happening inside our environment based on the way that we've built our workflow and our process for a particular incident or alert that is going to generate an incident. So now we want to triage that incident. And so we want to understand the incident page. We want to go collect additional data should we need to, using a playbook, like I talked about, where we can build that playbook directly into the alert, or we can kick a playbook off during an investigation phase. And then use the investigation graph to understand the signals and intelligence as they are mapped together by their relationships. And then, of course, update status, owner, so on and so forth. So within here is our incident pane and panel This is where we drive our incidents. This is where a SOC analyst is going to spend a lion's share of their time, is coming in here, taking a look at the incidents, looking at the severity, right? Looking at what is potentially interesting, going into the details of that incident, right? I can search by title or by ID. I can filter on the severity, the status, looking at different products, that product names that generated those incidents based on alert fire, and looking at who owns which incidents. When I step into the activities, right, all of the details of a given incident, there's a lot of things here to consider. The first thing is our incident description. You'll notice here that there's a lot of details. This particular incident was fired from our machine learning model, Fusion, under the hood. It took a look at several different data types that are being ingested into Sentinel, and it looked and saw, okay, well, Alex Wilbur performed a failed sign-in activity. No activity was performed in Sweden in the past 137 days. How do we know that? Well, we're trending activity by geolocation and by user. This is a type of user behavior analytics under the hood through Azure Sentinel's Fusion ML model to trend and take a look at that behavior by user and by location. So when we start to look at that, we then can pivot into our entities, and we can see that different artifacts and entities. We can see the IP address that the call was made from and the identity of the user from whence that call was made. So we have a lot of different information right here to be able to go and click. You can also see associated alerts. Now this is something new as well, where we're giving the analyst the ability to quickly identify how many alerts are mapped to a given entity type. In this case, Alex W, a user has 2 associated alerts with that username, but only one of those alerts is related to the IP address from this particular alert. When we dive in a little bit further, you can also see that we have view playbooks. Well, I want to go in and take a look at that IP address. So we kick off a playbook that says, go get IP reputation using VirusTotal. So we step into that, and we kick this off so that we can get a response back from VirusTotal to give us more additional details around that IP address. Well, let's step into what that logic app looks like. What we do is we pass the IP addresses a trigger from the alert that Sentinel provided. And so we have a list of IPs, or right, in this case, it's one IP, but if there are multiple IPs, it would be pushed into an array. From there, then we push all of those IPs down into VirusTotal. We make an HTTP REST request to VirusTotal. And then depending on the condition, we store the results of that. Is the IP found in VirusTotal? Yes, it is. We then send the results of that into Log Analytics and add a comment back into the incident so that it's all automated. Now we have additional data that we can go map back to our incident, and we've automatically added a comment back into our incident. If it was false and that IP address wasn't found, right, then it would just add a comment that, no, it wasn't found and something else was happening, right? And you'll see that here in a second. So in this particular case, we see that from VirusTotal, the condition that was met in the playbook was that IP address was not found in VirusTotal. So it added that comment into the alert for us within that automation practice. Then we can come into the incident and make a decision. Well, this is probably moved from a medium or a high down to a low or an informational until we do further investigation of the type of activity that we're seeing. Okay, so nothing suspicious about this IP address. We lower the severity, we assign it to a hunter, and with that, we may dive deeper into the graph UI. So those entities that we mapped earlier, this is where the graph UI takes advantage of the relationships of those entities and maps them together so that we can see how they are related from one entity to another entity, including base data. This is exciting because on any one of these, I can click on them, right? And I can see additional data about the alert, or I can right click and say, show me related entities to the alert, or show me related alerts to a given entity. So we give you both pivot options from one or the other, allowing you to expand out the graph view, showing you more and more relationships as Sentinel is stitching those together on your behalf, right? Again, removing the amount of work that an analyst has to do staring at columns and rows of data, trying to guess, are these alerts related? Are the entities that are within these alerts related? I don't know. Well, Sentinel is going to bring all of that to bear for you.
Hey, Ren, so
Yes.
this is very exciting because you don't typically you would have folks having to do queries and try to find the correlations. This is all done on your behalf by Sentinel, correct?
Correct. Yep, great question. So we can see an impossible travel happens. A fishy account in this particular one did something unexpected as a result from this alert here. This user account creation, unfamiliar sign-in, impossible travel. We've got an IP address here, an IP address there, right? Office 365 and Microsoft Azure, right? So we can see a lot of different things. One of the things that I like over here is what we're seeing is the timeline. We're seeing the timeline of events. Now, I may start with this alert that's highlighted in blue, and maybe that happened around, I don't know, maybe it happened now. But as I start to expand out and it starts to graph out all of these different activities, those things may go back further and further in time. So just because I start with something that happened today doesn't mean that I can't see the things that happened in the past, going back 30, 60, 90 days or longer, depending on the data retention settings that you set for your log analytics workspace for Sentinel to retain that data and persist that data right across all of the workloads and the entities, as well as the incidents that they're mapped within. So you've got a little bit more information here, info, entities. So now across all of these alerts, you could click on the entities and be able to see all of these types broken out by their type. So once we take a look at that, we may want to go and investigate an incident, and we do that using a workbook. We also do that through the graph UI as one example, and now I'm going to show you another example, kind of diving into sign-in analysis using Azure Active Directory sign-in logs. From here, this gives us the capability to kind of see Alex Wilbur again, 61 sign-ins, right? We can see the number of sign-ins and the number of failures, and it looks like we have a correlation, a 1-to-1. The workbooks also give us trend lines. We can also see the number of failures, when, how long ago did those failures occur, right? And from where? Were these failures coming from the US? Were they coming from Great Britain, right? Were they coming from Japan? Where were they coming from? Then we can pivot down and take a look at like the map review. We can see where these locations map up according, in this particular case, Ofer Shazef, who is one of my colleagues and peers on the product group. He's one of our feature PMs of Azure Sentinel. This is some of his data, and you can kind of see here, he travels a lot, right? And he's got a lot of activity across both the United States and Europe, Asia, right, and the Middle East. But when we pivot into Alex Wilbur, now we can go in and take a look at where those sign-in requests are coming from, and we see a lot of sign-in requests all over the place. That's probably not normal activity. This is probably something that we should investigate further, because now we're gathering that evidence and being able to bring all of this evidence to bear, both from the area or within the graph UI, the entities as they're stitched together through their relationship, and through this workbook, and really starting to tie in all of the evidence, all being able to do this within Azure Sentinel. Right? This is not travel, but neither is it from the usual suspects. So when we pivot out of our workbooks, we can then, as an analyst, start to dive into our log analytics data sets. Right? These are the data tables that live within our log analytics workspace that Sentinel is connected to. And from here, we can do an open search. So as you can see, there's an open search for Alex W. And it looks like there was MCAS discovery SaaS use. We see some activity there. We see some sign-in logs and other audit log data. But this open search really allows me to quickly go look for that user entity across all of the different data tables as an open search. We found 408 records, right, within nine seconds. That's pretty good across, right? This is last 7 days. So we're looking back a week's worth of data to go pull back, gigs or possibly even terabytes of data to go find those 408 records. When we dive a little deeper, we can then go after the type of information that we find is valuable. In this particular case, we think MCAS shadow IT reporting is important. We think that we want to see that, and we want to add a bookmark. Now, bookmarks are important because as a SOC analyst, as I go and I grab evidence, right, as I'm pivoting from workbook to Graph UI, as I'm grabbing all my entities and I'm taking a look at what the alerts are telling me, and I'm taking a look at how everything's graphed together, right? And I'm looking at the additional evidence within my visualization of a workbook. I can pivot inside here and go find that additional data by hunting using a Custo query to go after that additional data and then bookmark it. So in this case right here, we call it Alex W Yammer use, and we can also map it to entities. We can say, well, this is going to be mapped to this user, this username, this Alex. So this is the account, right? We're going to leave this blank for now. IP address, the URL is going to be tied back to our app name, our app Yammer, and then the timestamp of when this data was generated, right? Found when investigating Alex W following the GeoIP alert, right? So we tag all of that. We put in our notes. You will notice here, there are some tag areas. The tags give us the ability to add additional customized tags. I like to use these for campaigns. If I'm running a campaign, I may tag it Fluffy Dog, or I may tag it. I will tell you in our Cyber Defense Operations Center, we use scientific notation, right? That table. And so we'll go after like strontium, brontium, right? All of the different two-letter acronyms within that table and map them that way. And so that's how we map our campaigns and how we map them back to a particular threat actor that we see within Microsoft. So keeping that type of nomenclature, having our tags, having our bookmarks, and then being able to take all of this data, right? And then storing the bookmark under incident actions when we go back out of our log view and we step into the hunting view. As you can see here, we've pivoted here. We can go into our incident actions and then we can add to an existing incident, but we can also create a new incident. One of the great things about being able to leverage the queries that we've built within Sentinel's hunting gives you the ability to not only add bookmarks and data sets that you find through the Custo queries that you write, but be able to also create new incidents and maybe assign them to other folks to be able to go triage or run deeper analysis on. So in this particular case, we add it to this existing incident, right? And now we see under bookmarks, when we step back into that alert and that incident that was generated, we see the bookmark, right? And we see that Ofer created that bookmark for us to be able to map. Now, one of the things that he didn't capture for me, so I'm going to go back real quick just to show you right here. One of the things that you can do then is once it's added to an incident, you will see a bookmark tab. It shows up black with a cool little flag in it, and then it attaches it as a relationship to the alert. So as you're adding additional data sets, right, it's adding additional entities. It is graphing that in on the fly after the fact. So this is another great way to be able to store all of your evidence within that graph UI so that you can see a holistic picture across the things that we're alerted on and the things that we're not alerted on, shoring up that gap, right? And then when you do a post-mortem, go back through, look at your bookmarks, look at the data sets that you found that weren't alerted on, and go back through and identify, do I need to create an alert for that? Do I need to create an automated process for that, right? And so is that a gap? And identify that as a lesson learned. All right. So jumping into our respond, a couple of things here. Monitor using live streams, using a playbook we've talked about, and updating a whitelist to resolve false positives. Really like this, and we're going to kind of dive into this just a little bit. And I know we're about 6 minutes over, but there's a few things that I think are important. Again, we have our bookmark functionality. We can elevate the things that we're doing inside our live stream to an event rule. But here's the cool part. Let's say I found some activity. Let's say I want to continue looking for that activity. Let's say I think that the threat actor is still in my environment, and I have a suspicion around the type of activity that might get generated next. So I build a KQL query around that activity type, and I put it inside my live stream, and I turn it on. Now Sentinel is going to watch for that live. It's not going to create an alert. It's not going to create an incident, but it's going to start to list out all of the results, and it's going to trend it for you using some machine learning under the hood to really start to look at different activities so that you can come back here and make a decision on, do I need to eventually elevate this to an alert, or should I create it as a bookmark and store it as evidence to a given incident that I'm already running within a given campaign. From there, we may want to kick off an additional playbook. We may want to block a user, right? We may want to do some additional activities within that. Or we may want to step in and take a look at how we can reduce false positives. So from this perspective, and I really like this, Ofer's done a really great job of pulling this together. We use an external data operator. One of the things that you can do is you can leverage Azure Blob Storage to go store data in a CSV format, very similar to an active list, a whitelist, right? And then make a call through a URI, right, a REST URI, all within your Azure Log Analytics platform to go call that data and store it in a variable. Remember, I was telling you at the beginning, I could store data in a variable. Well, I'm going to build a data frame called a whitelist. And within that data frame, I'll use my external data operator with the principal name and string. I will call the URI. In here, he's blocked out that URI, and then ignoring any false positives, flags, what have you. And then from there, once he stores that data frame in whitelist, he then writes security event where event ID equals 1102, and that user principal name is not in the whitelist, right? And so what that does then is it updates that whitelist, right? It continues to add that data. And to be able to push that and to keep that updated, as well as you can also imagine looking that data up, right? Making sure if it's not in, or if it is in there, maybe I'm keeping data sets per virus total, so that, you have two different operators. Maybe you have one that's a SOAR playbook that's going out and grabbing that, and then another one that is pushing that data into this type of a list for you to be able to query and add at the time of rule runtime. So you can imagine the creativity and the flexibility that you have using different services within Azure. All right, so that's kind of a tease. That's a very high-level overview of a deeper conversation that I'm looking forward to having with all of you that join within the next 2 to 3 hour session that I know David and Eric and team are putting together. Here are some resources. These will be added at the bottom of their deck around our tech community, blogs, user voice, GitHub, where we keep a lot of our content. as well as our DL, Azure Sentinel at Microsoft.com. And I will plug too, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I have a post out there for our first ever Sentinel hackathon. I invite you to come, partake in the hackathon, help the community by building content, and win some really cool prizes. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, David and Eric.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ren. That was incredible. I love the driving people to want more. And, you know, there is a lot of appetite, I know, in my customer base in the West that really wants to know more about Sentinel, sort of the day-to-day activity. So very excited to work with you to get that scheduled. So David and I will be reaching out to you to get something on the calendar. So thank you for offering to do that for us. I think there'll be a lot of interest.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray.
I
appreciate
a lot
it.
of information in a short amount of time.
No, it was great. And I'm glad you felt free to go over because it is being recorded. And so people can take advantage of that. Okay. So everyone, again, we don't know what the topic is just yet for next week. You can expect an update very soon. And over the next week, hope you have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you. Great job, Rin.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Have a great weekend. Bye.